Today we're talking with Owen Jennings, retired farmer, former national president of Federated Farmers and a former Member of Parliament. Owen, today we're discussing the Methane Science Accord. What got you interested in being involved with the Methane Science Accord team?
Well, I just couldn't stand by and see the injustice that farmers were suffering from something that's unfair, unjust and unscientific. We need to be able to understand as a community, both the farmers and the non-farming community, that the government and indeed some of our major political parties have got the wrong stand. They haven't adopted the most current and most up-to-date and unrefuted science relating to ruminant methane, the burps from our cows and sheep. So I really am supposed to be in retirement, but I've come out to help farmers fight this thing, fight the injustice of it, and fight the devastating effects that would be imposed on not just farming families, but rural communities and the whole New Zealand economy.
Owen, who's involved with the Accord?
Well, there's a number of us. We've now have something like 100 leading farmers around New Zealand who are right behind us. We've got people joining us every day. The whole groundswell team is behind us. The group called Farm, Facts About Ruminant Methane, they're involved. 50 Shades of Green who've been fighting the erosion of good farmland with pine trees, and the Rural Advocacy Network down in Canterbury, they're all behind us. This is a massive move to have politicians understand the unfairness and the unscientific nature of what is currently being proposed and what is being imposed by the present government.
And what are the aims of the Accord?
We want to be able to say to politicians in the run-up to the election, you need to get your head around the science, the current science, the science that's true as of now. And when you do that, you'll understand that the amount of ruminant methane that's coming from the sheep in this paddock, for example, and for the sheep all around New Zealand and the cattle, is so insignificant, so immeasurable, that it needs any idea of taxing or restrictions or measuring on farm, of trying to breed methane-free animals, for example. It's just a total waste of time. It's unnecessary, it's unfair, and it's about to wreck, if you will, New Zealand farming communities.
How is the science changing?
Well, it's changing because originally, back when the IPCC was first set up, the science was just focused on the relative warming ability of methane relative to carbon dioxide, CO2. And they looked at the potency of the actual methane molecule, and they said it's 28 times more potent than CO2, so we've got to deal with it. It wasn't until a group of scientists at Oxford University came along and they said, hey, when methane is constant or not increasing, then the GWP, the old measurements, don't work anymore. They're just unfair. They're way out of line. And then more recently, we've had a number of scientists saying, when you look at methane on the electromagnetic spectrum, which is what happens in reality every day, then methane is even more overstated. So we want the politicians to look squarely at the science, the current science, which hasn't been refuted, and base their policies on that consideration.
So how has New Zealand got it so wrong?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that we've got a government that hasn't really gone out and battered for farmers. I'm really concerned that what I see is a government dominated by green groups who've got no idea what's going on out on the farm. Farmers are absolutely inundated with new regulations, new rules, even now with export prices falling, and the last thing they want is a tax on something that is unfair, unjust and unscientific.
Does being part of this group make you a climate denier.
No, not at all. I mean, if you look at the science, it shows that CO2, carbon dioxide and increasing levels are contributing to some warming of the planet. So we're comfortable with that. We're saying that even a tiny amount of tiny amount of methane that's out there will actually create some warming. But that warming is so small, is so insignificant, so trivial, that in actual fact you can't be measured. You can come out onto a farm here and try and measure the methane from these sheep, and it's totally irrelevant. It's a tiny, tiny fraction, and it has no effect on warming whatsoever. In fact, it would take 100 years of methane emissions to be able to find something that you could even find on a thermometer.
So where to from now for the Accord?
Well, the Accord is asking farmers around New Zealand to join us. Sign up, donate some money if you can so we can advertise, but we want all New Zealand to know, not just farmers in rural communities. We want the people in the cities to understand that there's something vitally wrong with the way the government and other political parties are treating the methane issue. We want them to understand the science. The science has evolved, it's moved on. There's no longer a case to take. And then we want the government to go out into the world and tell the Irish and the Argentinians, the Chileans and other countries that have a grass-based farming system to stand up together at the United Nations, at the IPCC, and make a case for having ruminant methane removed completely from any idea of taxing or impositions, measurements and all the other items that have gone with imposing restrictions on farmers.
Thank you, Owen, for your message today. Is there anything else you'd like to tell New Zealanders?
No, I'm all done.